a PhD degree is a first step towards being a scientist formally. And I feel that there is very little credible information available on the internet regarding PhD applications and admissions, and there is a lot of things which are available on the internet regarding the MS masters. So there are a lot of information available about GRE and masters, and we thought that this could be a nice thing to fill the gap between lack of PhD information. So we are hosting this webinar. This webinar will be recorded and will be posted somewhere. We will share the link with you since you have your email IDs, people who have registered. Also, we have a okay, so we have a super cool panel over here. Let me introduce to you our first panelist, who is Anshul Kamboj. He is a second year PhD student at University of Michigan, Ann Arbor. His research focuses on developing materials for nuclear applications. He did his undergrad in material science and engineering from IIT Roorkee. He has published 4 papers in peer-reviewed journals, and currently he holds a citation count of 100. I mean, which is really crazy for a PhD student at this stage. So, yeah, during his undergrad, he also interned at very top places like Indian Institute of Science, Tata Institute of Fundamental Research, and the Massachusetts Institute of Technology. He has been a summer research fellow twice and also won the best BTech project award from the institute. Now let me move on to our second panelist, Aditya Roy. Aditya, you can say hi so that people can.
Hi.
Okay, you have your names. Yeah. So sorry, you have your names there. So Aditya is an incoming PhD student in the Walker Department of Mechanical Engineering at University of Texas Austin. He did his undergrad from Indraprastha University in Delhi, and he graduated in 2018. Later in the same year, he joined IIT Delhi as a project assistant, and he has been working there since then. His research interests lie in the intersection of heat transfer, biological sciences, and numerical techniques. He has published 6 articles, which is again crazy for a bachelor students, or even to if he's doing a project assistantship. And one, he also published a paper in Nature Scientific Reports. I mean, which is another crazy thing. So before moving on to a PhD, he already has a Nature paper, which is, I mean, very crazy for somebody like me at least. So let me introduce you to our the final panelist, the third panelist, who is Shubhadeep Shau. He is an incoming PhD student at University of California, Davis. He received a BTech degree from Guru Nanak Institute of Technology in 2015, and then he got his master's degree in Communication and Information Engineering from Chongqing University of Post and Telecommunication, China in 2020, which is this year. He recently graduated. He has 2 years of work experience in TCS, Tata Consultancy Services. He was a research intern very recently at Nokia Bell Labs, Paris, France. His current research interests include elastic optical network virtualization, and survivability techniques. And people who don't know, the Nokia Bell Labs, I mean, is the god of telecom. So it is very big thing for anybody at anybody who have interned or who have associated themselves with Nokia Bell Labs. I mean, it's crazy. So yeah. So we have very distinguished panelists here. Let me just a second. Yeah. So I think Aveli ma'am, Professor Aveli Ghosh of EC department at GNIT would like to share her thoughts about this event. Ma'am, could you please come in and share your thoughts about this event?
Yeah. Good morning to one and all present over here. Myself, Dr. Aveli Banerjee, President of Alumni Association of GNIT. It gives me an immense pleasure to welcome you all for an online panel discussion, that is Quest for PhD on behalf of Alumni Association of GNIT. This event has been organized by Alumni Association of GNIT in collaboration with Research Matter powered by MHRD, Institution Innovation Council of GNIT. GNIT always treasure the alumni as one of the most important stakeholders and fosters a warm relation with alumni, and the Alumni Association is trying to consolidate and integrate the efforts through various events and taking the entire activities under one umbrella. GNIT Alumni Association expects your consistent patronage and support in order to grow further and flourish as a valuable unit with maximum alumni network. Alumni Association aims to provide a platform to many connectivity in all respects. So for today's event, already Sunny has introduced our panelists. We have with us Anshul Kamboj from University of Michigan, Aditya Roy, University of Texas, Shubhadeep Sahu from University of California, and the session moderator will be Sunny Sanyal. He is going to be a student of University of Texas. So we want to express our gratitude towards each and every one of you who are present over here. We also wish the event to become a grand success through your support. Thank you. And now I want to hand over this session to Sunny. He will be the moderator, and I welcome all the panelists on behalf of Alumni Association of GNIT. Thank you all.
Thank you very much, ma'am. So now to set the context, since there are a lot of people who might not be acquainted with the PhD application process, particularly in the US. So just to set the context, first, I would like to bring in Anshul to share a presentation regarding PhD applications. After the presentation ends, we will move on to the panel discussion. So Anshul, could you please pull out your presentation now? You have the privileges of a presentation. Please go ahead.
Yeah, I have made Anshul as a presenter. Anshul, you please verify. Yeah, you can share the screen. Yeah, it is visible.
Awesome. Welcome everyone. Basically, this presentation is going to serve as an overview on what PhD applications are, what are the process, what are the different parameters you would want to know, etc., etc. A lot of things. All right, let's get started. So basically, in this presentation, I'm going to start with very fundamental question: what is a PhD? What is research? And then why would anyone want to do a PhD? How and where to apply for a PhD? What are the different PhD application requirements? And what is the selection criteria, for example? And how can you ensure your admissions, like some novel techniques? All right, let's get started. What is a PhD? I think it's just like another degree where you do a lot of extensive and original research work in a given field. And at the end of the degree, you submit your thesis, it gets approved, and you get your degree. Now, I mentioned this word research, which is basically a creation of new knowledge where you create new concepts, new methodologies, new understanding, something new to the world, something you add on to the world, to the understanding of anything about your particular area. For example, if you look at my research area, I engineer materials at the nano level, which is the atomic scale. The spheres that you see here, they are atoms. So I engineer this scale to make really massive structures for nuclear applications. So here I'm working on something new which hasn't been studied. This is what typically a PhD student does. All right. So now let's move on. Why would anyone want to do a PhD? What are different motivations? What incentives do you have? Basically, if you want to do a research, if you want to get involved with some kind of discoveries, some inventions, this is something for you. Or if you want to become a professor, you want to take an academic job, you want to be your own boss, you want to study something which is really cool, this is something for you. If you want to become a scientist, if you want to take up a high-tech job in really good industries, R&D sector, this is something for you. Or because it is funded. Uh, Typically in US, you get paid to do your PhD. You get your tuitions paid. You get stipend to cover your living expenses, typically within this range, $1,300 to $3,000 per month, depending upon which university you're a part of. Of course, you're not going to buy these cars with this stipend, but anyway, just to say it. All right. So now we are convinced we want to do PhD. Let's see how and where to apply for a PhD. Typically, what I would do is I will look for rankings of institutes based on the subject I want to do PhD on. For example, if I'm a material science student, I'll look up for new US news rankings, which I personally trust and which I personally used for making my own list. And then I'll see which institutes are ranked based on material science and engineering. Once I have the list, I look for the professors in the specific department in those universities. For example, I've included the link for professors in my department, say, here at Michigan. Once you have a gist of which professors you're going to apply to, then I'm going to find the application portal and look for deadlines and get the things going. For example, I've included the link for my application portal for my department here at Michigan. So there are two ways by which university make their decision about who they're going to admit. One is by using a graduate committee. Let me just pull up my pointer. Can you see my pointer? Yeah. So one is by graduate committee.
Yes.
A graduate committee basically consists of several professors from the same department, and they're going to review your applications and make decisions on who they're going to admit, irrespective of the professors, what professors want. The other way is the professors have access to all the new students' information, and they can choose whoever they want. Just keep this in mind. I'm going to relate it to some other slide, which I'm going to come to. All right. So now let's talk about what are the requirements for PhD application, or what are the selection criteria. So in my mind, I think there are 7 criteria. One is your GPA, CGPA percentage, whatever you may want to call it. Second is statement of purpose, the SOP. Third is your resume. Fourth is your research experience. It can be internships, projects, BTech projects, or whatever experience you have with research. Fourth one is letter of recommendation, and then your GRE score, and then TOEFL score. Now, the one that I've highlighted in red are the ones which I think the most important. And we're going to discuss this one by one. Don't worry. The one in green, it's a little sketchy, which I'll discuss once I come to it. All right, let's get started with each one of them. So let's pick up the simplest one, which is your resume. It's basically a 2 to 3 page document that summarizes your career, your professional career so far. And just a tip, only include the information that you think would make a difference from selectors' perspective. For example, if you did a volunteering for some kind of X event, which was never related to your professional development, then just don't include it. So in summary, just include something which you think will make a difference and which is somehow related to your professional career and how it helped you become what you are. This is a resource which you can look up on how to write good resumes. The next thing is your GPA, CGPA percentage. Typically, there is not really an absolute number which a university would want. Like there is nothing as such that they're going to offer admits to students who have 9+ GPA or 90% plus percentages. It doesn't work like that. But for sure, you would want to be within top 10% of your class. Now, I'm not saying that this is the hard criteria. It's very subjective. It depends upon all those 7 parameters that I've showed you. So it's not an objective truth. It's subjective. People with CGPA, say 6+, they also do get admissions into good PhD programs. So it depends upon a lot of things. So you see the complexity of this subject. Anyway, let's move on. Again, the institute that you are a part of, its reputation does matter. And CGPA, I think, is the most important deciding criteria. If you have a very high GPA, it means you have very good chance of getting into good programs. GRE, TOEFL, typically they say GRE score, if you have a 320 plus, you should be safe. It's not like if you have less than 320, it won't work. Even I myself had less than 320, but I'm still here. So again, it depends upon all those 7 parameters. So, but to be safe, you would want a 320 plus. If you have a score less than 320, then even if you have other good things, it makes a little bit challenging for your application to pass on. But if you have like decent score here, 320 plus, then you won't get hurt because of your GRE for sure. Again, it depends upon university to university. If you are applying to say MIT, then 320 might be less. So it depends upon a lot of things again. For TOEFL, it's generally said that 100 plus score should be fine. But again, each university, they have their minimum TOEFL score requirement. And if you meet the minimum TOEFL score requirement, then you shouldn't be having any problem. Your application shouldn't be having any problem, any sort of problem by going through your selectors. If you meet the minimum TOEFL requirements, you're good to go. It's very simple. The third most important thing, that is the SOP. It's basically a document that answers a couple of questions in a storytelling manner. What are these questions? First, why do you want to do PhD and how it aligns with your future goals? Why do you want to join the specific institute that you are applying in USA? And what skills and achievements you have that makes you a fit candidate for the program? So SOP basically answered these questions in a storytelling manner, as I said. And story is very important because it convinces selectors, it makes a flow. So you would want to focus more on that story part. I've included 2 resources on how to write good SOPs. Please go through it. I'll share the presentation. Next is research experience. It's again one of the most important. It's not really required by any program, but it's essential for sure. It increases your chances if you have really good experience and decent. If you perform decently in other 6 parameters and you do really well here, it really makes a difference. What I mean from good research experience is if you have 2-3 good projects or problem statements with, say, professors, with companies during your internship or during your coursework, that should be good to go. Now, what do I mean with good projects? So good projects means if you did something where you defined a problem, you did some kind of a literature review on that problem, you did some relevant experiments to solve that problem, and you had that results, you interpreted them, and finally you have a story. Story basically explaining how your results are relevant. So if you did these kind of thing in a project, then I think that project is considered as decently good. Moving on, the last thing, the letter of recommendations it's basically letters from experts who are willing to recommend you. It can be from academia, it can be from industry, wherever you have done some stuff where people have supervised you and they are willing to recommend you for programs. That's something which LOR is. Typically, they say that academic LOR gets more preference than industry ones. But again, it varies from case to case. If you did internship in, say, Google, then it might reverse the case. So just keep that in mind. And you would want at least 3 recommendation letters from your supervisors. Now, the last thing, if you want to ensure your admissions, then you have to put extra efforts. That is by emailing professors before applying. A lot of students do that. What they do is they send emails to professors saying that they are interested in their PhD program, and professors interview them before really applying to the programs, and they get an unofficial, admit letter to them. So if you want to ensure your admission, then you have to do extra efforts. I think that's it from my side. That was the overview from my side. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Anshul, for the presentation. You pretty much summed it all. But anyway, we are going to have a very nice panel discussion after right now. So yeah, For people who have recently joined, I could see there are 38 users now who have joined. So I have already discussed this in the beginning of this panel, that please don't post your questions right away, because it could be a little bit difficult for us to look into your questions right away, because we are trying to host this event as a panel discussion. So first, we will have this panel discussion, and towards the end of this event, I will announce that the house is open. You can ask your Q&As. Then you can put your Q&As on the chat box, and we will quickly try to cover most of the Q&As based on the time constraints. So yeah, let me, and yeah, if somebody is joining right now, please select the listen only mode, because it could interrupt the panelist, because if you are getting in, so there might be a little bit interruptions from the panelist side. So yeah, please keep that in mind. Or use listen only mode for whoever is the audience is. Please choose the listen only mode, and please don't choose the microphone mode. So just a quick disclaimer. Okay. So let's move on to the panel discussion part of this session. So let me start by asking a question, that is, at what point in your academic career you have decided to apply for a PhD, and why have you chosen PhD over other career options? So anybody who's interested could answer this.
Yeah, so
Okay, Aditya, you may start first.
yeah, I decided to do a PhD, actually very specifically graduate studies, after I joined my program here at IIT Delhi, and the reason why I got inclined towards a PhD is after seeing the opportunities that a higher graduate program offers to a prospective student. Now the thing is that how did I actually uh, find myself so much inclined? The thing is that when I saw the kind of research problems that are addressed in these kind of institutes, the institutes by very high reputation. So these are actually the problems that somehow affect mankind indirectly or directly, in very specific ways. And the problems that they solve are extremely fundamental in nature. If you see the problem statements that they try to solve, they're extremely fundamental in nature, but somehow they affect mankind in a very positive way. So that is what moved me and made me very inclined towards doing a PhD.
So for me, actually, after my
Great answer.
undergrad study,
Anybody?
I have started working in TCS. Then I thought maybe I should go for master degree, and then recall everything, and should dig into more in the telecommunication part. Then I have joined master degree in China, and that master degree program was basically coursework plus research work. So when I have started doing research for master studies, then I have seen there are so many problems to work on. And while I was working on some kind of literature reviews and some part of that, I have seen that there are so many areas to improve, and maybe we can contribute to the world, and which just give me some kind of ignition to do research. So after joining master degree, yes, I thought I should join PhD study to do more intensive research, and I should contribute to the world for the telecommunication part. That was the point that was the point when I started, working on PhD applications.
So I think for
And
me,
why have you chosen a just yeah, please.
go ahead.
Okay, Anshul, yeah, you go first.
Okay.
So why
I
have you chosen it's the directed to Shubhadeep? Oh, sorry. I'm sorry. Yeah, please go.
Should I go, or do you want to go?
Yeah, sure. Anshu, please continue.
All right. So I think before coming for BTech, I somehow knew inside that I wanted to go for higher studies. I don't have any reason for it. It was just my instinct. But later in my second year, when I had a couple of internships and when I had worked on a couple of good projects, I thought this is something I can do like as a career. And I want to work on problems of my choice. I want to be my own boss. So I want to choose profession which has, the independent professions where you are free to do, you have a lot of freedom to do a lot of good or different things. In principle, if you look at evolution of mankind, the tremendous progress that we have made in the last 200 years, that's unprecedented. And that's basically because of research and development. If you see from nanoscale to nuclear bombs, you can debate they are good or bad, but ultimately you have made a lot of progress, and that's all because of research and development. And I think that that's enough to convince me to go for research as my career. So PhD is just one step in that.
And why have you chosen a PhD over other career options after your undergrad? It's to Anshul. Anshul, you may answer.
As I said, I wanted to be my own boss and want to work on problems of my choice. Typically in industries, you have to do a lot of struggle to get to a position where you would want to do something that you like. It doesn't happen in starting 2 to 3 years. When you get to a managerial position, then you can convince the management or something like that to work on something that you want. Ultimately, it's an industry, it's a profit business. So they are gonna set agenda for you. But this is not something I wanted. I wanted to work on some problems which I think I relate to, and I want to make a contribution in there, which is like a climate change and global warming. So that's why I chose, nuclear energy field, and here I am.
Thank you very much. That's a great answer. So, what are the things you people think in terms of skill set, experience, etc., recommended for someone to have in his resume to get into a top PhD program? And just a quick thing before people, you might be confused that this session might sound as a very US specific PhD application session, but it is not. In most of the cases, the application materials remains the same anywhere in the world, be it in Australia, in US, in maybe China, in India, I suppose, because I have applied to a couple of places other than US. So these application materials remains the same. So Anshul has explained the SOP and LOR are the things. These are universal, so everyone needs it. So in case you feel that this session is very US centric, so it is not, you can during the Q&A, you are free to ask questions which are not centric to US PhD applications. Yeah. So let me go with my question again. So what are the things in terms of skill sets, experiences, etc., recommended for someone to have in his or her resume to get into a top PhD program? Anybody could answer.
I think the research experience part of an application or the CV, as you said, is of utmost importance in a PhD application. Of course, as Anshul mentioned in his PPT, that formal research experience from an institution or from a company or any organization is not that important. If you can display a zeal in your SOP that you have some inclination towards solving an independent problem that can make a difference in the world in terms of advancing classical knowledge or maybe into applied research, that should be it. Now, the thing is that I think that you need to show a display of skill sets that you think would be important in the PhD program. Like let's say you have written about the problem statement that you're trying to solve. Now, if you can somehow display that I have some demonstrated experience in terms of using such and such skills that will help me in my PhD program, I think that would make a huge difference in your application. It will make your application more competitive.
Okay, so in my CV, I have mentioned like I have done this kind of intensive and I have done this kind of projects and I have solved the problem and I have 4 publications or like that. I thought that yeah, these are the things I have mentioned in my CV which are more important, and it have made difference made some difference with other applicants. And also I have shown them that like I have some kind of international awards which are very much competitive, and if you give me some problem that I can approach in my way, and I can solve, and I can discuss, and also I can do some kind of collaboration. And I have some kind of collaboration with other researchers from all over the world. And so yeah, this kind of skill set I have mentioned in my CV. And then I thought that yeah, these things are really important. You need to showcase your skill in some kind of defined way, so that it could make you different from others. So these are the point I have mentioned in my CV.
All right. I think in addition to what the other two panelists said, I just wanted to add. So if you think about a potential PhD candidate, what do I see as a selector? I want them to know, to be clear on the fundamentals of whatever they're going to study with. So first thing, you need to have good and serious coursework done. This signifies that you have clarity in the fundamentals of that particular field. This is the very basic. This is necessity. This is the first thing you should have. A very good coursework, good grades, done. Second thing, if you can, then do good research projects, do research internships with your professors, whoever you want. Pick a problem on your own. Just do something that I mentioned, essential for a good project. Third thing, PhD involves a lot of data. If I'm talking about PhD student, of course, is going to deal with a lot of data. So you must have some basic coding skills, for example, MATLAB or whatever. I think whatever works in your field, you should have that basic, coding language information expertise, so that you can hold a lot of data. This is something that the selectors would look for. These are just the basic things in addition to what other panelists have to.
Thank you very much for the answer. To summarize, I believe, as Anshul mentioned, the fundamentals and coding skills, as Shubhadeep mentioned, internships, and as Aditya mentioned, research. So these are some of the important things one might have, one might develop in a course of time to get into a top PhD position, as per the panelists. So coming to the next question, actually, it's kind of a follow-up question to this. What is, in your opinion, holds more weightage? Is it grades, academic research experience, or industrial research experience?
Grades do hold a good amount of importance in the application, in any application, be it master's application or a PhD application. It makes your application more competitive. But as soon as you pass the criteria, you have your fundamentals, you have your grades, everything, you have the good coursework, and what matters is the academic research experience, or maybe your industrial research experience. It is not important that always people coming from good institutions that they have done the research in would get a mark above the others. There have also been cases where people coming from good industrial background, let's say Google, Facebook, Microsoft, they have done their internships in those companies, and they have worked on some R&D problem. So that can also make a good difference in the application. So that's what I feel.
Okay, so in addition to Aditya, I can say that in India, I know about India. So in India, there are so many universities, and different universities has different kind of grading system. So sometimes I feel that yeah, grade is important, but it is very much very much relevant to that particular university. So I believe that yeah, you should be as Anshul mentioned, that you should be in top 10% or top 10% student. You should be in the top 10 student or something like that. Yeah, you have to have the good grade, but with the grade you need to have good research experience. Not research means that you need to do that intensive research before your before the PhD, but you need to showcase your skill, like yes, I have a problem and I can approach to the problem in my way. Like you can do this by your internship or doing some kind of BTech projects, and that project should be good enough, like Anshul mentioned also. So I believe that the weightage for the grade and the research experience or other industrial experience holds 50% or something like that. Similar weightage. Yeah.
All right. So let's break these three things. So one side you have grades, another is academic research experience, on third is industrial experience. So what do your grades signify? If you have high grade, I can bet on you that you may have a good understanding of your fundamentals. If I'm a selector, I don't get to interview you. That's the only way I'm going to know how good are you at your fundamentals. So of course, I think grades hold the most preference. Secondly, academic research experience. If you are familiar with academic research, it's mostly on, fundamental science oriented, not very applied. It's on a fundamental scale. So if you have that kind of experience, typically you have to define a problem, you have to study a lot about that problem, and then you have to get on your own ideas on how to solve that problem, and then finally you try to solve it, and then whatever knowledge creates out of it, you communicate it with the scientific community through papers and all. So it's also important, but I think not as important as grade. Third thing is an industrial experience. Now in industries, if you're doing just an industrial internship, you're gonna get involved with some kind of an applied methodology or some way of mass producing something. That's not really research. Industry people do their research in R&D labs. If you go to good industry,
I think Anshul is interrupted a bit, right?
Yes.
Anshul's video
Okay.
has been interrupted.
So
So basically,
yeah.
I would like to continue and add on to what Anshul was saying. So I would like to add on to what Anshul was saying, that you need to make the admissions committee or your professor, the potential supervisor, confident that the investment that they're making on you is going to be a fruitful investment. So basically, PhD is an investment on you. They are investing your time and the resources, and maybe to some extent their financial resources as well. So you need to make them confident that yes, if I'm investing in this person, he is going to turn out to be a good investment. So whatever floats your boat in terms of grades, in terms of academic research experience, in terms of awards, everything, it should be, as they say, it is always a holistic review of your application material. So everything should be strong.
Okay, guys. I think we are being a little bit more diplomatic because you have said everything is important. So if somebody like a person who is doing his undergrad, I feel a lot of people have joined who are currently pursuing undergrad. They might feel depressed. So it would be a little bit easier on them and less diplomatic. I mean, yeah, because if you say that we need grades, we need research, so I think people might get a little bit depressed. So yeah, let's not let's not be very diplomatic in answering things, but we can be frank. Like, you can just share your experience, like, based on my experience I think this is good. But yeah, I'm not influencing your answers anyway, so yeah, sorry
Yeah.
for doing that. If you think
So
I don't plan, yeah, I don't plan to influence your answers in any way. I think Anshul has rejoined. Anshul, would you like to continue?
yeah, I'm sorry for that. My connection got off. Where was I?
Could you
What's the
could
last
you
thing that
please
you heard?
so you were talking about industrial research like Google. So could you please turn? Yeah.
All right.
It's done.
All right. So in summary, if I would have to rank these three things, I would say grade take the topmost position, followed by academic research experience, which is an R&D experience, followed by industrial experience. If you have industrial experience in an good R&D lab, then I would place it equal to academic research experience.
Yeah.
Great.
To address Sunny's point, like for example, if you have a good CGPA or good GPA, then you also need to send your transcript. So they will look for the special skill set, like they will look for some kind of your mathematical background and your coding background and something related to that particular projects. If you have good grades on that that part of things, like if you have good grade in math or coding and some other telecommunications things, if you are applying for a telecommunication PhD, then maybe you don't need to consider other things. They will look for only that kind of special skill set you have, and yeah, then you will have more chances, I think.
Okay, so thank you for all your answers. Let me reiterate again because I see somebody posting questions. So guys, please hold on with your questions there because we will open this session up towards the end of this panel discussion, and then you may post your questions and we will choose your questions. In case you're posting it right away, so I'm afraid we won't be taking it right away because we are planning to end this panel discussion and then move on to the next session, which is the Q&A. So please hold your questions with you, maybe write it up somewhere, and then when I announce that the session is open up for Q&A, then please go ahead and post your Q&A. Yeah, let me ask you another question, which is very relevant to this particular audience, because I assume most of it consists of undergrad students. So, how one should start his or her undergraduate research? What is the best time to start? And is it better to pursue mentored research or independent research? So, you can answer it in any sequence. Yeah, anybody could take it.
So from my experience, I would like to share my personal experience. As Sunny introduced me, I am from Indraprastha University, Delhi. So very honestly, it is an average institution. It is not a very top-notch institution. I always wanted to get into mentor research. I searched for many faculties in my own department to get into mentor research right after second year of studies. So yes, but coming to that question, I think second year of studies, at the end of second year of studies, you have a good knowledge of the core subjects that are there in your field. So usually first year of studies is a mix of all the fields that are offered in your college, and at least in my college it was like that. And in the second year of studies, I was introduced to the core subjects in my field. So at the end of second year of studies, I decided that I should start at least some research problems. I should frame my own research problems, or at least work with some faculties. But I sadly I did not get those opportunities. So I started framing my own independent research problems, very small research problems. I took online help. I took the help of many mentors outside my institution, and then I got started with independent research. But as soon as I had some background in independent research and very small problems that I could prove my worth with, I applied for a research position after my undergraduate studies at IIT Delhi, and that is where I got an opportunity to pursue mentor research. So that was my case.
So, what you enjoyed more, the mentored research, because you have experience of both the mentored and independent research. So, what you enjoyed the most? Is it mentored research or academic research? I mean, sorry, independent research.
Uh, I would not rank those one by one, but I'll say that independent research gives you more liberty to form your own problems, to work on your own problems. Some problems that are very close to your heart, and if you can somehow take them to a good level, for example, publishing a paper, or maybe going towards a patent or commercializing it somehow. I mean, taking it to some extent, it gives you a great amount of satisfaction. It gives you a great amount of pleasure. On the other hand, mentor research is a very structured form of research. You know that these are the levels that I have to pass, after which I'll be able to reach a particular result. So both have their own essence. I'll not personally rank one above the other.
Okay. So, Anshul, I would like to, Shubhadeep, just a moment. Anshul, I'd like to take this question because, we have to.
Sunny, you are not audible.
Maybe not. Yeah. So,
Can I
yeah, I
answer
think
this?
am I audible to everyone?
Yeah, now.
Yeah, now you are.
Yeah, sure. Anshul, go ahead.
Okay. So, all right. So I think as soon as you realize that you have more time than just doing coursework, that's the best time you should start doing something else. It can be research or it can be anything else that you want to do. For my example, I started my research at the end of second semester in my first year itself, and then I just started going deep into it. I never left it. So in summary, get involved with something other than your basic degree requirement. That's essential, that will make you stand out of a crowd. Be a part of technical groups, research projects, whatever you like. The second part of the question about the mentored or the independent thing, I think of course I would go with mentored research, because more than just doing the project or solving that problem, what matters is the amount of skills you are going to get out of it. And it really flourishes out when you have someone to give feedback to you on, say, how you present things. Independent is good when you are like an expert, or when you have like basic essential skills. Then you'll be easily able to survive as an independent researcher. Um, Basically, what in my experience out of mentored research, I learned a lot of collaborative skills, technical communication skills, like writing papers itself, or presenting in front of a crowd in seminars. These are the basic essential skills that you would need as a researcher, because ultimately at the end of the day, you are solving a problem and you have to communicate that problem to the world. You have to communicate that the solution to the world. So you need to have some basic skills which will come through mentored research. Once you feel you are comfortable, then go with independent ones. But for sure, during an undergrad, try starting with mentored, and then if you feel like, then you can go for independent. I never did independent, so I don't know how good it is.
Okay.
Okay, so yeah, guys, Shubhadeep, just a quick thing. I think we are lacking time, so I will take you in the next question. So you can start in the next question. So guys, please let's make it a little bit faster this time, because I think we are already running out of time. So how publications? This question is to Shubhadeep. How publications, patents, citation, awards, fellowship impacts your overall profile, and does it increase the chances of getting a PhD offer? And how much one should have? I mean, people are going out of undergrad, so how much one should have, and how many citations, how many patents, how many publications could be termed as a sweet spot for profile for a PhD? Yeah, Shubhadeep, please go ahead.
Yeah,
Sorry.
again, as Anshul mentioned, this is very much subjective. Yeah, you need to build a good profile, and it can be the it can mention everything, like if you have publications, patents, or citations. Maybe in your undergrad study, I don't know. In my experience, I didn't have any kind of citation in my undergrad researches. But yes, for my master studies, I have some citations also. But you have to build a good profile which include everything, like if you have publications or patents or citations, and if you have some international awards, not some kind of local awards, like some sort of some sort of local awards. And also if you have the fellowship, and like if you have completed your research internship, then it can shows that you have a good profile, a good profile, and which can compete with other profiles also. So in my point of view, I think if we have the balance, if you have the balanced profile, then you might get the admission, and rather than others. And also I feel that, like if you have a master's in your master studies or undergrad studies, if you have publications, then it shows that you have some sort of potential to continue the research. And also again, you need to show that these awards and these publications are very much meaningful to that particular program. Then only it will make an impact. Otherwise, if it is some sort of I mean, if it is not meaningful to that particular program, then maybe it will not help your profile to get noticed by that particular
Admission.
university. Yeah, that particular university. So I believe you need to show your everything, and which is very much relevant to that particular program, not everything.
Aditya, would you like to say something on this? I mean, would you like to take this on? Do you have anything other than what Shubhadeep said to say?
Yeah, of course. As an undergrad student, as you said, that many majority of our audience might be undergrad students. So it is important to showcase to the university that you have something that you will add to their community. They are always looking for what does a student bring to our community. How can it be a good addition to our community? Uh, Very rarely, in very rare cases, it is possible that students coming right out of undergrad institutions have a good amount of citations or maybe good amount of publications, patents, good papers at good venues. So it is important that you showcase your research, your forte of research, that you have some interest in it. Uh, but if it is always not in your hand to showcase that I have good publications, I have good patents. So what is important is that you need to show your zeal towards it. You have some interest, and that might be a good addition to the community.
Anshul, I have a better. I have a new question for you, Anshul. To
Can I
you.
just quickly answer
So,
it, if you
since
don't
you are
mind?
already, yeah, sure. If you have, yeah, please go ahead.
Yeah. So I think publications are not required at all for even competitive institutes. You know, I have friends in MIT, a lot of friends in MIT with just good GPAs and decent everything else. Friends, of course, from my undergrad school, IIT Roorkee. So I would say they will enhance your chance. Yes, only if you have a decent everything else, that is GRE, GPA, and LOR.
Okay, so coming to the next question, I think it's towards Anshul because he's already pursuing PhD, and it could be answered by him better, maybe. So, how do you choose your venues for publications, and how to increase the number of publications in a stipulated time frame? Yeah, so you could take
So I
that
think
question. It's for you.
if I think about this question, I would say don't become goal oriented at the beginning, because you'll miss a lot of things. You people, our listeners, they are in undergrad. I would highly encourage you to focus your energy more on creating, creative ways to solve your problems rather than worrying about publications and all. Let the professors worry about it. Once you are in your PhD, then you'll get to know about this process more. As they said in the song "Ae Dil Hai Mushkil," "Safar khoobsurat hai manzil se bhi." So don't become goal oriented at the very beginning of your career.
No, I'm asking you in general. I mean, I'm not asking you in terms of admissions. So, how do you choose your PhD? Sorry, publication venues. So,
Well, there are a lot of
is it
different ways. If you're asking in general to me, what I do is I make a list of journals which can publish my work. So there are very specifics about each journal, what they publish, and then I'll take my professor's input. Of course, I'll consider different parameters like impact factor, a lot of these kind of parameters, and then I'll try to be ambitious in the beginning, going for the high impact factor journals. Once I get rejected from them, then I'll little bit lower my bar. Otherwise, it's fine if they accept me. So yeah, I think so.
okay? So, I'm not asking this question to Shubhadeep and Aditya, but I would like to add a small thing because I have also performed independent research, and there might be a lot of students interested in this. So, once you are doing an independent research, you may choose the venue of your conference based on some kind of conference ranking. So, most of the top conference people know about it. So, if it is a top conference, you should be having some information about it. And for the journals, there is something called a H index. So there is a website called JCR or Journal Ranking. I think it's Journal Ranking FJR. Yeah. So you can just check the H index, and if it is more than maybe 50 or something, then it's a good journal. Yeah. So let's move on to the next question, which is about it's about the application package. So we can actually skip no, let me ask you this. So what role do you feel GRE plays? This question is to Aditya. Yeah. So what role do you feel GRE plays on your overall application, and what role does TOEFL play in one's application? So yeah, tell us about the role of GRE and TOEFL. Yeah, Aditya.
Of course, GRE, having a good GRE score always helps you. But I personally feel that GRE is more of a rejection criteria than a selection criteria.
Yeah.
By this I mean to say that GRE cannot on its own help you get an admission. GRE would always get you rejected, but it will not get you accepted. So in my personal case, I was myself very bogged down when I saw my own GRE score. I will go ahead and tell my GRE score to everyone. It was 317, 168 in quants and 149 in verbal. So it was below. It was decent in quants, but it was below average in verbal. So, but despite that, from my experience, I got pretty good admits. I got into CMU and Purdue as well, besides UT Austin. So yes, your overall package matters. Maybe the other parts of my application were strong, and that overshadowed the low GRE score.
Okay.
So,
Shubhodip, would you like
and,
to say something?
yeah,
Shubhodip, would you
so
like to?
in addition to Aditya's comment, yeah, it almost rejection things and the GRE score. So for my case, my GRE score was less than 300, but I got accepted by University of California, but I got rejected by some other low-ranking universities. So that quite like. So I think that yeah, GRE scores are important, but before that you need to choose the specific program. Like if you choose the professors first and then show your skill, like yes, I have done this and I want to contribute in your lab in this way, and so that it will make some special things in your lab. So sometimes I feel that GRE matters, but it not really. So if you have some other skill to showcase, just showcase your skill to the professors, because if you have the GRE score low, then maybe the university will not open your application package. So don't always rely on the application committee. Just first approach to the professors, and if the professors thinks that even if your GRE score is low but your other applications material are really good, then they will sometimes they will approach to the application committee that yes, this student is very good and I want this student. So so if you have a low GRE score, just don't get depressed, apply for it and just hope for the best. And also please try to email the professors and approach them in other way.
Yeah, you have actually answered my next question. So I feel Anshul have already answered this in his presentation. So I'm not
I think I have
bringing
one thing to add, and which is it's important,
Please.
if you can
Yeah,
allow
please,
me.
please go ahead.
All right. In
Please
addition
go
to both of them, I think more than the total score, quantitative and verbal scores matter. People at USA, your selectors at US know that English is not our first language, so they are willing to accept us on verbal part, even if we are a little bit low there. But they won't make any compromise if you are low on your quant. So I would say 165 or 167 plus quant is necessary, and they can make compromises on verbal. That's it.
Okay. So let me bring this question to Aditya. So Aditya, how to shortlist universities and select the program which you wish to apply, and what might be the consequences of somebody moving to a different program other than his undergrad or maybe masters? So if somebody wishes to move from say electrical to CS, so what might be the consequences? This is the second question, and the first question is how to shortlist universities. Yeah, please go ahead.
I'll answer from my own experience. As Anshul had mentioned in his PPT, that you can always go for you can always refer to good ranking websites such as US News or Times Higher Education Ranking or US rankings. These are some many students follow this path of selecting universities, and but I personally what I did was during my research here at IIT Delhi, I was working on a very specific field called bioheat transfer, computational bioheat transfer, and I was very sure that I want to pursue a master's or I want to pursue graduate research in this particular field. So when I used to perform my own literature review for that project, I kind of got to know what all professors or what all labs are working on this particular field. So that is how I actually shortlisted my universities. It was a bit unique way. I shortlisted the universities from the literature that I used to read, and then I used to search for the professors. I used to search for the labs, and then probably mail them or express interest in working with them. So that is how I
Anshul, would you
used to.
like to add anything on
I
it?
think
Would you like
I
to?
agree with him. I agree with
Okay.
him.
So yeah, let's move on to the next question then, because I think Shubhodip, would you like to add something?
No, it's okay. Also, I agree with them. Yeah,
Okay.
I
Yeah.
have also done the same.
Yeah. Let's agree a bit more frequently because we are having less time. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, this is a very important question to all of you. How one should fund his or her PhD, uh, how funding works in USA particularly, and how one may respond to a PhD offer without funding. Yeah, you can answer it in any order. Okay, Anshul, you may start.
I think so. In US, you don't have to worry much. Professor pays for your tuition and for your living expenses. You shouldn't accept any PhD offer which is without funding, in my experience.
Okay.
Yeah,
Shubhadeep,
for me
would you
also, I think, yeah, for me, I think if you are getting into a top-notch PhD program in USA, then you don't need to worry about the fundings. And they will offer you the fundings through TA, RA, or something like fellowship, this kind of things. So yeah, if you don't have the funding, then for example in Europe, I have applied to one European university. In that case, I don't have that funding. So if it in my point of view, if it is a good PhD program, then go for it. And after first semester or first year, start looking for other TA, RA, and other opportunities over there, and then just start your PhD program. Don't just let it go, because maybe in next term you will maybe you will not get that much of opportunities. So I think that. So
I
let
would
me
like to add
clarify.
on a bit. I would like to
Sure,
add on
sure.
a bit here, since this is actually a very important question, considering the PhD applications. The funding part is actually very important. So, TA-ship, RA-ship, these things are all obviously there, as Shubhadeep mentioned. But at times, there are cases where a student gets into a very good program from maybe a top 10 university, but he's unable to secure funding with the admission offer. So I've personally seen my friend's case in this particular event. So what he did was he went to the university, and within the first semester he approached a professor for TA-ship, and he got a good TA-ship offer. And his fees that the fees that he paid for the first semester were actually reversed. So that is how he started funding his PhD, and from the second semester he got an RA-ship. So this is how his unfunded PhD got converted into a funded PhD.
yes, also I want
So
to add one
yeah,
more point.
Shubhadeep,
Also,
actually we don't have. Yeah, okay. Yeah, I think we don't have much time. So let's. Yeah, we have a lot of other questions too. Yeah, let me move on to the next question. Uh, how many applications one should make? Please make it a little bit fast. How many applications one should make to have higher chances of getting accepted? And what are your strategies? What were your strategies of writing or drafting the application package? Please, Shubhadeep, you may start.
okay, so first of all, we need to rank the universities what we want. Like we need to rank the universities like in three ways. First one is the ambitious universities. Second one is the moderate universities, in my point of view, and third one is the safe universities. So for me, I have choose like the top universities or ambitious universities, which has the which has less than 100 or 150 QS world ranking. And then for the moderate university, I have chosen less than 200, and for safe university, I have chosen like less than 400 QS ranking. And then I have applied. So for example, if you have got rejected by the ambitious universities, maybe there is some kind of higher chances that you will get accepted by moderate or safe university. So at least in my case, I have applied for 6 universities in USA.
Okay. Anshul, would you like to add something to it?
I think 3 ambitious, 3 moderate, 2 safe. That's it. Total 8.
Okay. And okay, and how you categorize some any university as ambitious or
I
moderate or
think
safe? It's US
I
ranking.
agree with I agree with the what the previous panelists said.
Okay, so it's the US ranking. Just to clarify, since there might be a couple of people who might not have watched Anshul's presentation, so there is a ranking called US ranking. Shubhadeep mentioned QS ranking. So there are different rankings, and you could consider it for making a list of your universities, ambitious and moderate and safe. Yeah, so it's this question is specific, particularly very relevant in these times. So, how COVID-19 has affected your PhD offers, and how do you plan to start your PhD in these pandemic times? So this question is for Aditya. Yeah, please go ahead.
Yeah, so as you all know that the US embassies, the US consulates in India are currently closed. They're closed in many parts of the world, and I don't think they'll be opening up very soon. If they do, God's grace, I would always be looking for opportunities to get an expedited visa appointment somehow. But if that does not happen, if I'm not able to make it to the university by the end of August, that is my starting date, I would probably defer my admission to January, that is the spring intake, and start with my research in the meantime with my professor. So I'll be starting with my official coursework in January, but my research will be beginning from August. So that is how I plan to proceed.
Okay, and Shobhadeep, so do you feel that your PhD offer has been affected by COVID-19, or do you think that you might have received more offers if in the normal times? Do you feel that
Yeah,
it has affected you anyway?
yeah. Also,
Please go ahead.
a similar thing for me, like Aditya. So I have to join my university in September, but I have deferred my admission till
No, no,
January.
no, no. I'm not asking that. I'm asking you this: did COVID-19 has affected your PhD offer? So how do you feel that? Do you feel that you might have received more offers in normal times? So how it has
Uh,
affected your offer? Yeah.
No, I don't think that COVID-19 has affected my offers, but I feel that COVID-19 affected my I mean in the starting of my PhD. The application
Okay.
offers, for example, we have already applied for the universities in December or November. So and we have received the application. We have received the admissions in February and March and May. So I don't feel that has affected my applications process.
Okay, so I would like to add a little bit. Like it has affected hugely on my application offers because I have been interviewed by more than 4 or 5 people, and 2 or 3 of them said that we will get back to you, and then they said because these are uncertain times, we cannot offer you position because there might be some issues like funding constraint or immigration issues. So yeah, this has affected me. Since nobody has said this, I would like to put that point out. So this is a very specific question to Anshul. So how you have managed to get an internship offer from Massachusetts Institute of Technology, and how to seek academic internships, and why you have chosen academic internships over industrial internships. Yeah, please make it quick.
So basically, you have to stand separated from a crowd. Let me just give you statistics. A lot of students apply to professors, especially in good US universities. Typically, a US professor in a good university will get more than 1,000 emails per year for just internships, and he or she is gonna just have 1 or 2 positions for internship, or even they may not have. So you have to do something unconventional. So what I did is I suggested a proposal. What several professors are working with their research. They looked at my proposal. They said that it's not worth it, or it's not something that they would want to work on. But what they felt is the willingness for my research, my willingness to do research. So that separated me, and then I got a lot of reply from professors. Usually you get very less reply, but I think I got a lot of replies because of this strategy. So you have to try and experiment a lot of different creative ways to get separated from a crowd.
Okay, and would you like to say why you have chosen academic internships? Because we have done 3 academic internships at ISC, TIFR, and MIT.
So
So why you have chosen?
it was simple. I did my first internship. I really liked the academic environment. You have a lot of freedom. You have a lot of funding to work on, and you don't really have to answer a lot of people. It's just your professor, small group, and everything works out. From that experience, I just moved on to another academic internship. So I never really explored industrial ones. So I can't really say.
Okay,
But
so
I think I thoroughly enjoyed my academic internships, and I just kept doing them.
okay, so this is another very important question, and this is particularly this question is for Shubhadeep. So, how one should, because based on my understanding of your offer, you have discussed your PhD position with a professor abroad at an academic conference. So, could you please tell us how one should approach a professor at any academic conference for a PhD position, maybe?
So for example, even if in my experience, even if you don't have any kind of papers to present in the conference, still if you feel that you can go to the conference and you can meet some professors who are very much interesting and who are working on in your domain, then just go and show them your skill. Like I went there and I met one professors and I have shown him like these are the papers I have worked on, and also he belongs to the same community, that is the optical networking community. And before going there, I have mailed that professor, hi professor, I want to meet you, I'm very much interested to meeting you, and I have seen that you are going to present this topic in that conference. I'm very much interested, so I want to meet you. And he said, yeah, you are always welcome. Then I went to that conference and I met him, and I have discussed with him like, hi professor, I have done this much of research which is very much related to your works, and also I want to contribute these things in your research lab. So before meeting the professor, just do some research on that professors, and so it will make you impactful, and he will think that yes, he is very much interested in my work. Then show your skills and show your papers or something like that, then got hired.
Okay, thank you very much for answering. It's a nice strategy. If anybody is listening who is having a conference in near future, go ahead and apply this strategy. Aditya, the next question is for you. You have been working as a project assistant at IIT Delhi for 2 years now. So, how somebody should apply for this position, and what it takes to get hired at that kind of position?
Yes, my story is a very interesting one. There are two ways that one can apply to these positions. One is through advertisement that they advertise in their industrial R&D websites or anything that they call in their institute. And the other way is to mail the professor, mail each and every professor in the department that you are interested in any university, in any institute, and wait for the replies. So the second strategy is what I personally applied, and I emailed around 15 professors that I was interested in working with. And the problem that I faced was the professor that ultimately interviewed me. He did not offer me funding from the very first day of my position. So he wanted to see how I actually performed in his lab. The strategy that I stood up out of the box was that I offered him my own problem, a problem that was very close to my heart, in air and water purification, and I started working on that particular problem. After 2 months of my work in his lab under his supervision, he knew my worth, that I was actually doing some pretty good research, and it was then that he offered me his own research problem, and that is how I got officially associated with IIT Delhi.
Okay, thank you very much. We are open for Q&A from the audience. Please go ahead and shoot your questions. Now you can have all your questions answered. Avili ma'am, are you still there? Do we have a little bit of, can we extend this time maybe for 10 to 15 minutes? Is it possible?
Yeah, sure. There
Yeah,
are some
so,
questions in the public chat box. I think
yeah, so I am, yeah. Okay, I am going to ask these questions, but can we end this session on maybe 10:45 or 10, yeah, 15
Yeah,
minutes
yeah,
more?
yeah, sure. Yeah, sure. You go on, please.
Yeah, thank you very much. There are a couple of questions from the audience. They have mentioned it in the registration form. So let me start with those. Can somebody join a PhD program right after his or her undergrad? The answer is yes. So I'm not asking it to the panelists. PhD in USA versus Europe. Okay, let me answer it for you. In PhD in US, it typically takes 5 years. In Europe, typically takes 3 to 4 years. In Europe, it is kind of a shorter duration. But for you to have a PhD position in Europe, because I have received, I think, two offers. One from UK, in the Imperial College London, and the other one is from Delft, I think, Delft University in the Netherlands. Yeah. So in typically, you should have a master's degree beforehand. So in Europe, you can't go for a PhD right after your undergrad. So they require a master's. and in PhD in USA, you might join it after your undergrad. I feel both have their own pros and cons. In US, they have a very rigorous coursework, and in UK, they have better fundings for research. So I feel they have more rigorous research, and not more compared to US, but they are kind of similar. But it's up to you where you wish to go. And now there is another question. I would like to put this to the panelists. So, how to learn the citation quickly? I'm not sure what this question is. So, okay, the question is how to learn the citation process quickly. So, maybe let me rephrase this question. What is the citation process, and how one may one may look into it, and how one may have citations before applying for a PhD position? Yeah, Anshul, please go ahead.
Citation is nothing. It's basically someone is using your research, and he she is formally acknowledging that they are using your research. So you have no control on your citation unless you do some kind of a fraud. It's not something to worry about. So I have around 100 citations, and it's mostly from people who are not associated with me by any way. They use my research to, formalize their statement or to garnish their statement, their formal statement, and they got some results, similar results. How we interpreted them, they also interpreted in the same way. So they just got us as reference. So this is basically a citation process.
Oh, okay, so let me add a little bit on the top of it. Citation is something that shows your impact. Let me define the citation a little bit formally. So if you have a work which is highly cited, so in academia, because academia is peer reviewed, so you are being judged by your peers. So citation gives you tells them that your research has higher impact, and the more number of the citation it has, the more impactful it is. So you have more index called H index. Your H index will be higher. So H index is what is given to an individual. If you have a higher H index, you are known to be a more famous professor or something. So yeah, this is how it works. Then let me move on to a question from Richie. He is asking, will the next year's admission get affected as many students are deferring their admits? Should we look for other countries other than US due to this chaos in visa policies by the Trump government? Okay, I would like Aditya to answer this.
Actually, this is very hard to answer at this point, but I personally don't feel that in the next year's admissions. Yeah, maybe the funding scenario could be subjective. It would depend on several factors. But some universities that I know right out of my head, like USC, is one of the universities that has already clarified that the next year's intake will not be affected by any chance. So yeah. Coming on to the next question, should we look for other countries other than US chaos in visa policies? It is up to you, but I personally feel that education, it depends on what you want to do with your education. If you only want to get into the US to get a good job and settle in there, then probably it could be a matter of concern, and you should wait for some more time to get get more clarity on these policies. But if you are going to the US to get a good amount, to get a good quality of education, to do some meaningful research, to make a good impact on the research community, then Trump's policy, or for that matter, any government's policy, should not be affecting you.
Okay. Thank you very much for answering that. Let me move on to the next question.
Sunny, we have with us our principal, sir. Good morning,
Okay.
sir.
Good morning.
Yeah,
sir.
good morning. Good morning.
Sir, would you like
I
to?
request you to please, if possible, can you please on your webcam?
Yeah.
So don't worry, we are going to work on this Q&A right after this. So Professor, Professor Shantanu Sen is with us. He is the principal of GNIT. Sir, could you please felicitate our panelists for their participation to this? Yeah, we have a memento. Ma'am, could you please pull that up?
Yeah, sure. Great. I'm sharing.
Hi, Aditya and Anshul.
Good morning, sir.
Hello.
Yeah,
Good morning, sir.
Great
How
to
are you
meet
doing?
you.
Yeah, Shubhadev, how are you?
Yeah, I am fine. How are you, sir?
Yeah, I'm fine. It is long time I have seen you.
Yeah.
And Aditya, you are from which college?
Sir, I'm from Maharaja Agrasian Institute of Technology. It is affiliated to Indraprasth University in Delhi.
Okay. Because I had a student similar like you. I thought it is you. And Ansul from which college?
I'm from IT Roorkee, sir.
IIT Roorkee.
Yeah, but I'm in second year PhD in University of Michigan, US.
Okay. You passed out from IIT Roorkee.
Yeah, in 2018, sir.
Or do you know Professor Veer Singh? Veer
I
Singh,
don't think so.
aged person from physics. He retired actually last year. He has joined in
Oh.
our college.
Ma'am, okay. Can we have this screen?
So it is nice that you have presented. Today, Aveli, the number of audience is very less, I could see.
So actually there were more than 45. Right now some of them have left because of some emergency purposes. So they have messaged me personally before leaving. So there was near about more than 45 candidates were there. So I have taken the attendance of them also.
Okay, actually, our the semester exam, we have conducted our semester exam, the final year with a proctor based. If you know that proctor based online test, we using artificial intelligence. And after very successful of conduction of the final year examination, we have conducted for all. We are the autonomous engineering college. So now we have planned for conduction of these, these other years. There is first year, second year, third year, and their mock test is from tomorrow, I think. That's why, and then from 20 the final examination. That's why the students are quite busy with the semester examination. And so I think this could be arranged later on also after the examination, and where the potential will get some time, and because many students are interested, and some junior faculty members they are also interested. So another, I could see you have spoken a lot of about citation index and how the means research on this area. Apart from this direct PhD, because GNIT is having a good culture of this publishing research papers. During this lockdown period, we have published 26 Scopus Index journal. Scopus Index and SCI and Web of Science was there, and NAS was also there. And so we have a good culture of publishing these SCI and Scopus Index journals. And patents, we have last year we have filed 22 patents. Right now, during last 2 years, 3 years, we have got 46 patents. So this year I taken a target for 50 more patents. So students are also doing research and publishing patents in association with the faculty. So you have
Sir,
yes,
we have this memento. I have pulled this out. Could you please felicitate Anshul? This is a memento for Anshul. Sir, could you please felicitate him? I mean, say something to him.
yeah, I was telling actually that Anshul, and you have done a beautiful these things, and since you are associated with this, so it is good. Carry on. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, sir.
This is for Shubhadeep. This is for me, and this is for Aditya.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So there is a small
Thank you.
token from e-token from GNIT, and later on, if
Yes.
you get time, then we'll give you the hard copy of that.
Sure. Thank you
So
very
much,
much.
sir. That's so sweet.
Thank you very much, sir,
Thank
for
you so much.
coming.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much.
Okay, you carry
It's an
on.
honor. It's an honor talking to you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir.
So let me quickly ask you the next two questions. I think it will not take more than 5 minutes. So if an undergrad is from an unknown university, which means maybe a low tier university, but MS from top 30 university in the world, how does that institution reputation gonna impact his PhD? So yeah, who is interested in taking this? Okay, Anshul, you could take this.
I think you can always go for more degrees. Like if you don't think that your undergrad is not from very good college or you don't have other application supportive material like good LORs or good research, you can always go for a master's degree, and you can aspire for a good institute there, have done masters, and then try for your PhD. But I think a lot of people I meet here and elsewhere who may not be from very good known institutes, but they still make it to here. It's primarily because they have done a lot of good internships. So you have a good opportunity during your undergrads, maybe your summer times or winter times. I don't know when you get a lot of a good amount of time to go places. You can always go for good internships and have done work and have good LORs that can support you in your application.
I would like to add on a bit here, because I personally was in the same case. My own university was an average university, an average institution. So, but I had a zeal for doing some meaningful research. So the strategy that I took on my own was that I took up a great BTech project. I myself won the best BTech project award from my own college, and based on that BTech project, I applied to a few universities, to few institutions, to a few professors. One of them was IIT Delhi, one of them was IIT Indore, and another offer that I got was from Cranfield University in London, UK. But the reason I did not join Cranfield University as a visiting student was because the program was not fully funded; it was partially funded. So a strategy that you can apply is you can get onto a research internship position after your undergrad, or maybe a project assistantship position, as myself, to make your background, to make your profile a bit stronger, to get some good recommendations, to make a stronger SOP, and that is how you can maybe make your profile stronger.
Okay, so in addition, I can add for my case also, it is very much similar with Aditya. So what I did, I went to a MS degree, which is very much research intensive MS degree, 1 year of coursework and 2 years of research work. So it has impacted my applications because I had 2 years of research experience. So I have utilized that research experience to apply for the PhD application.
Okay, the next question is from Tamal. So it's to Shubhadeep. So he's asking, how do you identify the best institution for your goal? This is the first question. The second question is, so how the pandemic has impacted the application. So we have already covered it in the latter part of this video. So Shubhadeep, you could answer how do you identify the best institute for your goal?
Okay, first, the goal means your research interest. I feel so that your goal means the research interest. So for your research interest, you need to find out the best research group, because I feel that when you are going for some research applications, then maybe you have done some kind of I mean the pre-study, like you have read some kind of papers which are very much related to your research, very much related with the research. After reading that papers, you can find that these professors are working on this type of topic, and then just sort out the professor first. For me, what I have done, I have first sorted out the professors, and then I have sorted out the research groups which I am very much interested. Then I have visited the professors, and sometimes I have emailed the professors, and I told them that yes, I am working on this research, and I am very much interested to join your group. Then if you think that yes, this research group is belong to a very good university, then go for it.
Thank you very much for answering it. The last question of this session is how to choose a conference or a journal for a research paper publication, as there are many. So I have already answered it. So let me take that question for this panel. So you for a conference, most of the time you should know that in that particular area of research, which is the top conferences. And if you don't know, there is a website called it's called Guide to Research. You can Google it, Guide to Research. They are ranking different conferences, but this is very subjective. But some top conferences are always known to people. And the second thing is how to choose a journal. It is kind of less difficult because there is a website called journal. It is called journal ranking. So once SJR, Schemago general ranking. So you could actually Google it. You should check the H index. If you see that the H index is high, I mean by high I mean more than 30 or maybe 20, 30 or 50. So it's a good to go journal. But let me also say something which is very important to undergrad students. There are certain publications which are known as it's called they actually take money and they don't publish quality papers. So they are called predatory journals. Yeah. So the exact term is predatory journals. So I know a journal which is called IOSR, and there are many other journals. And please don't go for predatory journals to increase the quantity of your publications. It actually doesn't matter how many publications you have unless you have quality publications. So if you have publication which is like in case of Anshul, he has hundreds of citation. In case of Aditya, also in case of Shubhadeep, Aditya has a paper in Nature. Shubhadeep has a paper in top IEEE journals, Impact Factor, which is 9.5. So once you have papers in good journals, don't increase your quantity by publishing in fake journals like the predatory journals. There is you can just Google it. There is a list of predatory journals. Just Google it and you will find it. Don't publish in predatory journals. So with that, I think it's time to wrap this up. Thank you very much to all the panelists. I'm going to email you the mementos. Thank you very much for supporting us, Professor Aveli Ghosh. Thank you, ma'am, for supporting us throughout this panel. Thank you all the audience for helping us, for joining this session and making it a success. We have already recorded the session, so we might be posting it in somewhere, and maybe you will get an email today or tomorrow. And thank you to all the organizers, particularly GNIT media team and Professor Shantanu Chakrabarti for making the social media campaign and the logo. And thank you Research Matter, which is my own page in Facebook, for taking the initiative to host this event. I really thank you all again for joining and hope you have a great future ahead. Thank you very much for joining in the panel.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah, thanks.
Aveli ma'am, can you please turn the recording off so that we can discuss?